Hello.
Right.
How's it going, Trace?
I'm good, and you, my friend?
Yeah, lekker. Happy Ignite. Happy
know.
Heritage Day.
I know. Braai day, and there was no braai in my future today.
No, the current climate doesn't work particularly well for.
Doesn't lean well for braai crowd.
No.
Cool. So again today, Rod, I am absolutely, for those who's done some of my previous webinars, I've been the laziest girl ever. I am sitting back. I'm abusing this young man to just take over and teach us cool new things. And I'm really looking forward to what you'll be sharing with us tonight, Rod. I learned a lot in the last one, I must admit.
Yes, we're gonna continue that this time. We're gonna learn some slightly better ways to do it than we did last time.
Are you one of those teachers that makes us do it the difficult way first and then you show us the other ways?
No, so the way we did it last time was sort of more grokkable. It sort of makes more sense.
Okay.
And the way we're going to do it tonight is the better way to do it.
Cool. I'm excited.
We'll do that. But before any of that, we've got some news.
We do?
Yes, we do. So, as we said, right, Microsoft Ignite is happening like now, right?
Mm-hmm. Like right now.
Like right now, lots of stuff coming out, lots of really, really cool things happening, lots of news coming out of it. If you haven't managed to catch all of it, which I would be surprised if you have, Trace found this really cool resource, the Ignite 2020 Book of News. It is awesome. Like, it'll give you the lowdown on all the announcements that have been made and make it a little easier to keep up on everything, because there is a lot, hey.
It's a lot. Let me tell you what, I've written a little workflow because I haven't been able to attend as many sessions as I wanted to, and at the moment I'm kind of emailing it into a channel in Teams, and then I'm going to go back and slowly just kind of work through there and take an article at a time or something and check what it was about. So I'm very excited to go check out what's happening.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff coming out across the whole of O365, M365, including the Power Platform. And one of the things in the Power Platform which we just have to show off is these awesome new icons.
Oh, I know. How cutie.
They're so cool. Like, I love these. These are very much like the new icon, the new Office icons.
Yeah.
Right, that they did.
Yep.
I'm so happy they've updated Power Platform to them,
Me
because
too.
that's so cool. So we've got Power Apps, AI Builder, Power BI, and Power Automate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So cool. They look really sick.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm sure those will roll out eventually, and I'll be very happy for it. If you're looking for your Power Apps icon, that's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, because it's already in the tenant, hey?
Already there.
I had to go like where's that thing I'm looking for? So they're already in my tenant, so that's pretty slick.
Very, very cool. So, speaking of the tenant and Power Apps, shall we get into it?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Let's do it. Okay. So here we have our app that we started with last time. And we've got our little list of things we're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. And we'll see how much we can get through.
See how clever that was.
So cool. Trace showed me how to do pointy things with my cursor.
Curly, wobbly things.
Pointy, curly, wobbly things, and I just haven't turned it off since she showed me, which is very cool. It's a little confusing when I'm playing Minecraft and I'm sprinting around, and suddenly I've got these big bubbles.
Does it look like you're in a Doom game?
Yeah, it's quite strange. It's good fun. So last time we made our gallery for our incidents, and we put in our severity filter. I have changed it just a little bit. I didn't like the none in our drop down, so I've given it a blank one.
Okay.
Right there. And I just changed our collection so that instead of none, it's giving a blank value.
Okay.
There's a function called blank, which will be blank, right? Counts as null if used to SQL at all. So that's the only changes I've done.
Okay.
So the first thing we want to do this evening is we want to add additional filters, right? We're going to add a type filter, so we can filter on either of them, both of them, right?
Got it.
That's going to change the way we do our filter here, right?
Okay.
We had it equal to none. Now we're just checking if it's blank. So if it's blank, then you're just going to return the whole thing. Otherwise, you're going to filter it, right?
Okay.
Which works fine as long as we've got one filter.
Okay.
But if we've got multiple filters that we want to affect the same thing, that doesn't work. And we'll see how that's going to work. But before we do that, let's add in our other filter. So we're going to do it in the same way we did our last one. So I'm just going to add in a, let's do it a little bit different maybe. Let's do a combo box. Last time we just did a drop down box, right? So we can pick one of them.
Ooh.
So this time we'll do a combo box so we can see what that looks like. So here's our combo box.
Geez, Rod, you're busy upping my Power Apps game here. Like, seriously.
Yeah. And combo boxes are really quite cool. So, because they can allow multiple selections, right?
Got it.
So we can select multiples out of it instead of just the one.
Got
it. So we want to generate the drop downs for this thing. The way we're going to do it is we're going to create another collection, just like we did for the severity, because we're going to want to use this later on as well, right? But if you're not going to be reusing it, right? If you're not going to have a form where you want to capture this information, all you're doing is displaying information, right? We're just displaying this data source. In that case,
wait. I don't understand what you mean by if I'm not going to reuse it. Just take that one step back.
So the reason, because you remember when we put this in, right? We can, for our data source, we can just type in our different data here, right? We can just go like 1, 2, like this. And that will act as our data source for us, right? We can just do it on the control. We didn't do that on this one. We created our collection because we know that at some point we're going to want to have a form where we can submit incidents.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. So because I'm going to do that, I don't want to have to do this every time I want that set of information, right? For severity, we're using it in the filter. We're also going to use that same collection for the severity when we're putting it into the system, right? And then if it changes, if we want to add a new level of severity, I don't want to have to go back and have to change it on this screen and then go to the edit screen and change it there as well, right? It's inefficient.
Like a variable nearly? Is it like really like?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It is. So a collection is essentially a variable. A variable is typically one thing, where a collection is sort of a table, right?
Okay.
That's not really true because your variable could be a table. You can store a table in a collection. Collections work slightly differently. You can write 2 collections and edit the collections where variables, you'd have to rewrite the whole thing. Cool. Whereas a collection that treats it as different rows. So, but for a moment, let's say we know we're not going to be reusing this, right? So all I want to do is filter this data source. So one nice trick just a little bonus trick here, is we can just pull out what the distinct types are, right? There is a function called distinct, right? And it's going to give you all the distinct values in a table.
That's unique.
So that's unique, yeah. And then you've got to give it a number of columns that you want it to do. All we're interested in is the type. That's called incident type, I think. I can't remember what we called it. Let's just check. Incident type, yeah. So what that's going to do, I'll just close that off. Now, if I hit the drop down, it should. Apparently not. It should work.
So for everyone listening's sake, Rod does that on purpose. So because I sometimes need to see something 2 or 3 times before I get it. So I really appreciate you going out of your way, Rod, to make this
absolutely
easy.
It's all planned. Absolutely all planned, right? I'm totally not pulling up the distinct function in
in a browser.
The next one there.
That's how everyone does it, mate.
That should totally work. And actually, okay, that's what we need. So we need to pull the result of that, and then, yeah, there we go. Then it's going to show me just the different values we have there.
Got it. Just remind me, Rod, like in SharePoint /InfoPath terms, what was that called? So you used a distinct now, but what was that called when we filtered a field to only show? Is it unique values? What was it?
Yeah, it's unique values. Yeah, I think there was a little tick box in InfoPath where you can
that then returned
those. Yeah, so the distinct does that, and you can add in multiple columns there, and it'll do that row of whatever you give it, right? Okay. We're not actually going to do that.
What?
Because we want to reuse this, right?
Oh,
so
did you just make me like learn something that I didn't need?
Yes. Well, you don't need it now, but you might need it in the future.
I'll take it.
It's a handy thing. It's a handy thing to know, right? So we want to make another collection for this new drop down of ours, and we're going to do it on app load, right? So I've gone back to my app section here in the on start property, and I want to add another function here, right? We've already got this one. I want to add another one to it. The way you distinguish between different functions is you put in a semicolon, and that tells it like you're running another one, right? So I can say, then I can here collect another one. We'll call it cold type. Again, we're not going to give it a blank value because this is a combo box, so you can just have nothing selected because you can have multiple selections. And we've got safety, we've got security. Need to put in my environmental, we've got injury, and we've got quality control. Another thing to be aware of here is these things are going to be case sensitive, right? In the context we're using this, where we're checking this against the list itself, it is going to check on case. So you do need to keep that in mind.
Got it. That's also important in Power Automate, by the way. So the case sensitivity, and even in SharePoint for views and things. I mean, it's just a good practice.
Yeah. So always do keep that in mind. Okay, there we go. It's got that. And if I now run that on start, we'll now have our new cold type collection. So if I go onto this one and on the items property of this, again, if I click it, right, it's actually going to ask me to set my data source. And I can say call type. And we've got all of these. We can select multiples or remove all of them. So the multiples thing is nice, right? That's why you'd use a combo box.
That is nice.
Again, I'm going to rename this drop down. In fact, I should call it combo box. And we'll add in another label up here. And we'll just change that text to give it a second to catch up with us. My internet connection is a little slow today. There we go. That's also another little tip. If you are typing a bunch as text, like here, if it's not doing it properly, if you just take out the last inverted commas and put it back in, it usually jump starts it. Okay. I don't know why, but it does.
Good to know.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got our severity drop down and we've got our type drop down. So we want both of them to be running at the same time on our gallery. So we are going to have to change our gallery items filter, right? Here's what it looks like at the moment. So we're doing our if statement, and then the if statement is returning either the whole data source or a filtered data source, right? And if you've only got one filter, that absolutely works, and it's kind of intuitive. So that's why we did that last time, right? We're checking if this, then you return that data source or the other data source. Because we now have two different data sources, we're going to do it in a completely different way. We're going to reverse it, right? So we've got our filter wrapped in an if statement. Now we're going to wrap our if statements in a filter. So
this is starting to sound like cooking to me.
Cooking's good. I like cooking.
I don't.
So we'll start with our filter.
All the recipes start with, and now take a clean pot. I'm like, oh, there you lose me.
Yeah. So we're going to filter first. So we start with, here's our filter and our data source. Then we're going to put in our logical text, our logical test, right? So what is our test to see what the filter is? So we'll do our severity one first. So we can say if, and we need to check first, is something selected, right? If nothing's selected, we want to return the whole thing, because otherwise we'd get nothing on start. So the way we're going to do this is there's an is blank function. So the is blank will do what it says, right? It's going to check if the thing you give it is blank or not. So we want to check if our severity filter the value of the selected text, so selected text dot value, if that's blank, right? So if it's blank, we want it to just return the whole data source. So the way you can do that is you can just return it true, right? Because this is our logical test. So if it returns true, we're going to get the whole thing there. So that's sort of the trick in this. And if it's not true, then we want to filter it, right? So then we put in our filter. And our filter is the same as it was before, really. So here's our severity filter dot select text dot value, So if that value appears in, and that's our severity, right? So we can just scroll down in severity, right? And if we just close that off, that should now run. There we go.
Cool.
It is complaining that if we have a really large data set, this might not work. It should be fine, unless you're dealing with truly large data sets, right? If you're dealing with a few thousand, it's fine.
Or what it returns on the page?
It's the full data set, so it's this incident management data set. And you can see that's now working for us, right? And it is going to pop up this little thing for you saying like, it might not work on truly large data sets because we're delegating this through. That's fine. And we can see if we pick medium, it brings it down to us. If we pick out blank, it goes back to nothing.
What would you say is a fix for that, Rod? If you have a very large, I don't know, what do you mean by very large?
So chances are anybody watching this webinar is not dealing with a truly large data set, right? Like I'm talking about like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lines.
Okay.
If you're dealing with thousands of lines, it's fine. It's really not going to be, it's not going to be a problem. If you're dealing with really, really large data sets, then there are some other ways to do it that are not, that aren't as sort of slick as that. But chances are you don't need that whole data set anyway, right? There are very few situations where you truly need to return 200,000 records. There's usually some amount of filtering you can do before you even get to this part, right? Mm-hmm. So those probably have a status on them, and you can disregard all the closed ones.
Okay.
You're returning only the user's ones to them, that sort of stuff.
So here's a quick question, and again, I'm you know me throwing curveballs. So could I point the database at a specific view? Or should I rather write the items into a new list and point it to that? So I'm just trying to get that right in my head.
So no, so it's not going to look up to the view, right? Yeah. When you add the SharePoint data set, it's going to pull in the whole list. Mm-hmm. If you are dealing with a really large data set, you're not going to have it in SharePoint.
Okay.
Right? You're going to hit the wall of SharePoint operability before you hit the large data set operability here. Once you get up to 100,000 lines, you shouldn't have that data in SharePoint. You should have it in SQL. Right? Okay. And then you're dealing with it in a different way.
Okay.
So
I'll take your word for it.
Okay, so now we've got one in, and we want to add in our other one. Right? We want to add in our type as well. So that's pretty easy now. Because we've done it this way, we can just do the true as well. So we can just do an AND, right? And if I put a space here, it's even giving me the different operators, the different logic operators. And what we're looking for is the two AND symbols is an AND. So what this means is it's going to check for both of the sides of this AND, right? So here's our first one for our first filter, and we're going to put in our second one for our second filter, and it'll check them both. And both of those have to be true for it to work. Makes sense. But because if it's blank, it just returns true by itself, it doesn't matter. Am I making any sense? Not really. Okay, so we'll try that. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to say if is blank in bracket out our way, and then our thing is called CB type filter. dot. You can see this one has selected items rather than selected item, right? Because we can have multiples. But in the same way, we then have value, right? And we want to say if that is in incident type. So, wait, I'm doing that wrong, right? So we're just doing our is blank. Then if it is blank, we're just going to return true.
Yep.
So it doesn't mess up our first filter. Otherwise, it has to CB type filter dot items value in incident type. Then we can close that off.
Okay, Lyman's just recap that for me. We're filtering the list at the bottom, the list that it returns now, and says that if the filters at the top is blank, then return true, which is all lines. Are we?
Yeah, yeah. Why are you complaining here? Items dot value. Cannot.
Again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, Rod, for making mistakes on purpose, so that when I do this on my own, I'm not shocked when I have little multiple incidents like that. I know it must be so painful for you, but thank you from the bottom of my heart.
No, my absolute pleasure. Why is it complaining about that? I don't know why it's complaining about that. So that is a table type. Because it could be multiple values and we're trying to, okay, so what we can do there is, maybe if we just swap this around like this, see if it prefers it that way around.
See, now the difference between us is I would have been too stupid to make that mistake, Rod. That's the problem with me. I would not even have done it the other way around or know how to, but now I do, kind of.
Yeah, so sometimes this is a little finicky, right? So a combo box is more complicated than a drop down, okay, right? Because it returns a table of values, whereas a drop down gives us just one value.
Okay.
We might have to come back to this next time if this is not going to be working for us. Okay, so right, what if I select all of these? Yeah. So it doesn't like it if it is blank. So our is blank is not, our is blank filter here is not working. Not selected items. Right, so this is a table, right? So it's checking if the table is blank. It's theoretically not blank there, so it doesn't like our is blank check here. So instead, what we can do instead of is blank is we can do a count of the number of rows in the table, right? Value equals 0. There we go. Okay, so a couple wonky things happened there, right? couple different wonky things happened there. Let's try break this out. If I click that, is it gonna? Yeah, I think that'll help us illustrate this better. Okay, so this is sort of the most complicated stuff you can do in Power Apps, right?
That's great, Rod. I'm so
a lot of different filtering things.
So grateful you brought it straight into our 5th session. I really, that you just pulled that forward and like brought it right in there today. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So I say it's sort of the most complicated stuff you can do. It's not that complicated if you break it down, right? Okay. It looks really nasty, but it's not that bad if you break it down, right?
Okay,
so what are we doing here? We're filtering, right? We want to filter our gallery. So we're filtering our data source. There's our data source, right? That's pretty easy.
And do you want to zoom in a bit there for us, please?
For sure. How's that?
It's better, thank you.
Okay, so we're filtering our data source. Then we've got a logical argument, right? How do I know what I'm supposed to display in this filter? Well, I want it to match my 2 drop-downs, right? Essentially. So the first one is our first drop-down, right? So if our severity filter, if the value of the thing we've selected in the severity filter is blank, so we haven't selected one, then just return true, right? Show me the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I haven't selected anything. Then if it's not blank, then you need to make sure that that value is in the severity column, right? So I'm matching the 2 up, so it's only going to show me those. So that's pretty straightforward. But I've also got an and, because we've got 2 of these. So you must show me things where the severity filter matches and the type filter matches.
Yep.
So that's our and there. So the type filter's more difficult because we're using a combo box, which is a gallery of items rather than just a single selection. So instead of just saying, is it blank? Do I have something selected or not? I can't do that because it's always going to return a table. Even if the table's empty, it's still a table. So the is blank doesn't work for us because it's still going to return something. So what I'm doing is I'm counting the number of rows in that table. So I'm giving what are we counting, right? We're counting that. So if I've got nothing selected, I'm counting 0. So I'm just saying, okay, if it's 0, right, which means we haven't selected anything. If it is 0, then I'm just going to return true because I don't want to mess up my severity filter. If it's not true, that means I have things selected and I need to match up what I've selected in the filter with the data source. So that's the incident type column. I've done it the other way around here than I did up here because, again, this is a table, right? This can have multiple things in it. Here, I've only got one thing. So up here, I've just got the one value that I've selected in the drop down. So I can just compare that straight to the column. Is this one equal to this? Is this one in this? The other way, we have to do it the other way because this one is a table, right? Our combo box is a table and our incident type is a single. So we're saying, is our single piece of data, which is coming out of our data source, in our combo box table? And in that way, we can mix and match between the both of them. So let's say I only want to, both our medium ones are safety. That doesn't help us. I've got poor ones here, but we can say, okay, I only want to see safety and I want to see quality control, and it'll bring it all through for us.
Love it.
So that's how you can add multiple filters, and you could do this now. You could add as many filters as you want, right? You just do another and at the end here and put in another block for your other filter, and another one and another one and another one. You could do hundreds, don't do hundreds, right?
Okay.
You've only got so much screen real estate. You want to keep it to the minimum, really. You want to keep it to what's useful to the user, which sort of goes back to our planning discussion we had last time. You want to make sure that we can do that.
Okay.
The next thing I want to do is, this is great, right? This is fine. I want to do this medium, and I want to see the safety and environmental things. Now, I want to go back to the whole list, right? But to do that's a bit of a mission. I have to, okay, let's select that blank. Let's go X out of those.
Are we going to put here a button?
Right? And we can have a reset button. So let's do that. Super simple. We'll have a button.
Whatever, right?
On the right-hand side. Yeah.
Super
simple. You'll see. Let's put in some text here. What are we going to call it? Reset, I suppose, works. Clear. Clear would probably be better. Clear. Okay, so we've just changed the text, and then our on select property of that, because our button, what happens when we select it, so the on select is there is a really cool function called reset, which is going to take a control. You see there's two here, there's reset and there's reset form. They both do the same thing, right? They take something back to default.
Okay.
So we want to reset our controls. So we've got DD severity filter. Again, we need to put in our semicolon, and I'm pressing Shift Enter to get down to that next line, right?
As one does in WhatsApp.
Just as you do in WhatsApp, yeah. You can also just put it next to, it like this. But that doesn't read as nicely. And it is worth spending a little bit of extra effort to have your code, right? That's essentially what we're doing. Read nicely, because we'll make it easier for you later down the line. Speaking of making things easier later down the line, I think you can see why I was so insistent that you rename your controls.
Yep.
Because when we're doing this, if I had to like drop down 1, drop down 2, drop down 3, it gets very difficult to. In this sort of thing, it's not so bad, and you can see it even highlights the different colors for you. So you can see CV type filter there is highlighted in green, and it's got a little green box around it. So we'll do that tie up for you, which is quite nice. But when we're doing stuff like our filter function, it really helps to tie them together, right? It's kind of important that you can reference it and keep it clear in your mind, because that gets quite difficult. So that's just going to reset those two different things. So if I pick a couple of things here and I hit that, it resets them to blank. Hello. And should reset that. So you can clear things out with a reset there, which is pretty good. Another way you could do this, right, is instead of this referencing the selected values specifically, right, we're referencing them exactly. You could, there is an on change property on all the controls, which is what happens when this changes, right? We could have that set a variable, and then you could reference the variable in the filter, which is another way to do it. It's not really necessary.
Okay.
I would also like to add some searching. While we're at this, let's do some search, because filters are good, search is better, right?
Yep.
That's what we've learned from the internet. So I want to put in a search. So I'm going to add an input, I'm going to add in a text input, and we'll move this down here, and this is going to be our search box. Try to line it up nicely, and we can make it a little longer. I don't want text input there. I want to call it search. That's actually, I don't want, what is it called? The default for this, I don't actually want it to be called search. There is another, this we just want to be blank. Right, because we don't want to default it to anything. We can change the tooltip if we want, and then when we hover, it will give us a tooltip.
Okay.
So we want, actually, let's take let's put in another label, so we can just label it search. T-search. Type would help. Typing is an important skill. Okay, so we want to make this searchable as well as filterable, right? And the way we do that is we're going to put this whole, we're going to wrap this whole filter we've got here in a search function. And let it open our brackets here. Should give us our little pop-up. So here's the explanation for what the search function does for us, right? We say search and we open our brackets and we say, okay, what is the source that we're searching? And then what text are we searching? Like what is the input string for the search? And then we can add a number of columns that we'll search against, right? So for this one, we're going to search. Our source is this whole filter here, right? Whatever the output of all our filters is, that's what we're going to be searching against. So I'm going to search through all of that, and then our comma, and then what is the text that we're going to be using to search? I haven't renamed our field yet, so it's just text input 1 dot text, right? That's whatever we type into that specific piece. And then what columns are we searching against? Again, Power Apps is nice in that it will actually present the different options for you. So we want to search against the description, right? That seems a good thing to search in. We can search in the title too, right? That's probably all we need to search in. We could also add in our severity and our type, right? But I think those are sufficient for now, and then we can close that bracket. And now we've got our search configured as well. You'll notice also I've got it searching against the description, even though on this page there is no description. Search. There is no description.
But it will return the values where it equals.
Yeah. Yeah. So right, so if I go start searching, it will do that. And there we go. We do want our default here to be blank as well, yeah. And so now we've got really quite a sophisticated gallery happening here, right? We can filter and we can search, and it will search those specifically, however we want to do that, which is using these different kinds of controls you can present a really large amount of information to the users and still make it useful, right? You never want to just have a list that is hundreds of lines long that they have to scroll through for 20 years. That's never a good idea. You always want to let people chunk it nicely, right? Make it easier for people to use. So we've gone through our multiple filters. We've had a look at our search. So now let's look at ordering, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we order this? Because this is kind of messy, right? It's all over the place. How do we order it? So again, it's just another function, and we're gonna wrap it in. How is it returning that for me? That's weird. Sort order. Just trying to, off the top of my head, yeah, sort order. The brackets on that. We'll give it a second. Should give us what that is. Waiting for it to pop up this. Sorry, give me 2 seconds here. Boom, 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 boom. Totally not just looking this up in the background, right?
Of course you're not.
So it's not sort order, it's called sort by, I thought I had that right, sort by columns.
Remember, this
I
is about
typed it
being
earlier
real.
and then it didn't. Sorry?
Sorry, this is about being real, right? You know how many times I watch videos and I think, like, how do people just get that right so perfectly? But I'm pretty sure they take those videos and they snip out all the little mistakes and then they thread it together again, and it's this perfect little 3-minute video clip that does it right from the start. And that kind of makes a person negative. Like, I mean, when am I ever going to be able to get it right like that? So
yeah, so the two things I'd say there is, I do like that sort of edited content. Makes it easier to follow, right? Rather than I'm just blathering around here. The other thing I'll say is, as an IT consultant, especially in the cloud these days, right? I'd say probably at least 70% of my job is Google. Like Google foo is important, how to search for things and how to find what you need, right? I know, like I use this a lot, and I tried to do a sort by and it didn't come up with what I wanted. So I started second guessing myself, but yeah.
I fully understand what you're saying about, you know, wanting that perfect answer immediately, but I'm coming from a citizen developer angle, okay? And for us, it's really difficult to look at these things and the imposter syndromes in our heads where we think we'll never get this right, and it looks so easy when you do it, but why do I struggle like that? So this just makes it feel real for me that it also gives me an opportunity to look at the different ways and what it is that I might be doing wrong. I mean, because remember, you can't succeed without failing. You've got to have those steps of failing to get to a point where you succeed. So without that, learning isn't successful.
No, absolutely. And it is like any IT person, if they tell you they just do everything out of their head, like, frankly, I think they're lying. Everybody does Google, which is one of the great reasons I love Microsoft. Is the community is really strong, and people like helping out. And if you have a requirement, you can find it online. You really can. So you can just Google, how do I sort a gallery? And it'll remind you that it's called sort by columns, not sort by order by. So yeah, sort by columns. Again, our handy dandy little reminder text up here tells us what it wants from us, right? So sort by columns. First, we need to give it a source. So what is it sorting? Well, it's sorting this whole block we have here, right? The output about search and filter and everything is a data source. So that's our source. And then we can give it a comma. And then what columns are we ordering it by? Well, I think we probably just want to do it by the title. Right? Makes sense to me.
It does.
So we'll just order it by the title. And then we can give it ascending or descending. So let's have it as ascending. Right. And then if we go back down here, it's now got it in an ascending order for us. Right. Yeah. And if we change that to descending, it would put it in a descending order for us. Deleting my closing bracket. The most difficult thing you're going to find in Power Apps is the most difficult thing with anything like this is closing your brackets and making sure you have the right brackets opened and closed. If you click next to a bracket, it will show you where its partner is. So here we've got this one. You can see up here it's showing that one is closed. If I go to this one here, we can see it's that one that it's closing. So that's an important thing to know. And here you can see it's doing that there. You can also have a you can have that variable as well, right? In our example app we built, in our template app we built, they had a little toggle to let us swap that round. So let's add in a little toggle ourselves. I just want to make that black just because I like black, and we'll make it a bit smaller. And we can put it up here. It probably works better down here, actually. Right, so let's add it down here. And we're just going to change the on select of this. And we're going to set a variable, right? We're going to set a variable for ourselves. And I'm going to call it var sort order. And I want to, let's say, send. You can, one of the nice things about Power Apps, right, is it will do whatever kind of information you give it into the variable. You don't have to tell it, it's okay, this is a function, this is a number, whatever, it will do that for you. So if I do that, just like that, and I click it, I also need to change this down here. So instead of just being descending, we're going to change it to var sort order. Like that. As soon as it catches up. It's now like that. And then we can just we can put in a little if statement. Sort order equal thing. And we're going to set it ascending. Otherwise, we'll set it F, right? Give it a second to catch up. So if it's descending, then set it ascending, otherwise set it to descending. And that way we can toggle it back and forth. seems to be taking a little while to catch up to what I'm trying to tell it to do. No, I didn't spell it. Spelling is very important if you're doing this sort of thing, which
They say grammar is important, but I have to say that motorbikes is importanter.
Yeah. If I can do this, anybody can do this. So now we've got that there, and if we click it, it'll pop it out for us.
Awesome.
You could have the same thing for severity, status, type, right? This this whole thing we've got going here is getting complicated, right? We could make it more complicated. We could have little buttons that change the sort, so it's not just on title, it's dependent on what variable we've set. So actually I want to sort it by severity or by type or whatever, right? Yeah. We could go on and on and on with this and make it more and more complicated. But typically I think if you do it like this, you've got your bases covered.
Cool. Right, so we've got a couple of minutes left, like very short timing. Let's quickly look at that little text box of ours on the bottom. What are we going to do next week? What's our plan?
Yes, next week, I think we're going to do a little bit more sort of customization here. We'll put in a logo and we'll do a little bit of work on some support stuff, right? How a couple different ways we can show users some more information, right? Some policies, some help, some support, some stuff like that. And we'll look at a couple different ways you can do that. We'll look at how to generate a pop-up and how to do a footer. The footer and the pop-up we can reuse multiple places later.
Are you going to remember this, or are you going to put it in that text box in the corner?
It is already in that text box in the corner.
Oh, well done. I'm looking on a small, what do they call it, producer screen.
A small screen.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's our plan for next week.
Cool. Right there, that was pretty nifty.
Yeah, I think that was quite a lot this time. But,
it was a little bit complicated for me, but at least I've got videos to go back to, so we can do this.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants us to revisit these things, do let us know, right?
Yep.
And we can do that.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So
we'll do a wrap up. As always, community is most important for us.
Yeah, the community is of the utmost importance, right? Like nobody could do this stuff in a vacuum. It really is everybody helping each other. So do get involved, right? Find the stuff on Twitter, right? There's lots of great stuff on YouTube. Lots of really, really good resources on YouTube and on Facebook. Things all over the place. Get involved in your local groups if you have them. Go seek out some like-minded individuals, and everybody can help each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it for us for this evening.
I think it is. Thank you so much, Rod. I'm still learning. This is incredible, and it's really doing me well. And as soon as Ignite, it is over now, so I want to start working through some of those videos and start doing something. So I'm excited to do that. As always, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and you must have a wonderful week. And everyone listening as well, have a great time. And we'll, like life and earth willing, we'll see you next week.
Yes. Be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely.